give
Oh
the
my
audience
gosh.
what you gave me and then give me more.
Yeah. Just you reminding me of that gives me chills. It was such a pivotal moment. I was in the middle of this journey of trying to figure out, do we build a program, going to New Zealand, trying to figure out if this is the right thing to do. And I was at the IVOC conference, which is the International Violence and Trauma Institute. And there was a woman and a man doing a speaking session, and I particularly was interested in hearing her because she was working in the prison system with those who had been, in prison because of domestic violence and obviously very serious charges. Many of them were doing life sentences for murdering their partner and all of
Oh.
this. And so I really wanted to sit and listen to her. And so I went in and her name is Amanda, and she started talking about her personal story. Her husband was very violent, put her in a coma. She came out of that and very similar to myself said, we have a problem here. Yes, my husband is going to go to prison and I never want to be with him again, but he's going to get out one day.
Hmm.
And who is going to be there to help him never do this to somebody again? And so I was like, okay, there's somebody else who's thinking, similarly to me. And then Daniel got up to speak. Um, And I wasn't, and I don't think anybody else in the room was expecting the powerful story that he told. And I'm not going to do it justice. And it is his story to tell. And he does have a documentary. He's in a documentary. His name is Daniel Adams. You can Google
Hmm.
him. Um, he got up there and said how important it is that we really help people who have done harm. And I've heard other people talk, who have done harm, who have admitted, that they have abused their spouse and, all of that. But Daniel in particular was talking about how important it is in the prison system in particular.
Hmm.
He, told us about his experience being in prison, that, he was able to get his GED and, he
Hmm.
went to substance use, disorder classes and Bible study and all of this. And he said, however, I spent 25 years in prison because when I was just barely an adult, I got into an argument with my wife, my brand new wife at that time, and in a rage, I murdered her.
Hmm.
And he said, I sat in prison for 25 years and not once did anybody
Wow.
ever offer me education, support, knowledge, discussion, anything when it came to how do I never do this again when I get out?
Mhm.
And he said, I had to live with every day in there that I took this person's life.
Hmm.
Um, and that she had no choice in it. And, that I was going to eventually be free and have to learn how to, have a job and a relationship and all of these things. And he said, I had no tools.
Hmm.
And that really clicked for me,
Hmm.
just like I was saying earlier, that tool bag.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there was not a dry eye in the
Mhm.
house when Daniel told his story.
Wow.
Um, and people who I think generally stand on the side of abusers can't change. And that, once you cross the line of seriously harming somebody, there's no sort of retribution, there's no going back for you.
Hmm.
to see Daniel, who is a real person with real
Mhm.
feelings and a real story, and talked about his childhood and how much he was abused by his father,
Mm.
make a split-second decision in a fit of rage that he can never take back. Do
Mm.
we just throw that person away?
Mm.
Do
Wow.
we try to help them so that first and foremost they never do that again? I mean, ultimately, I think that's what the justice system wants. That's what survivors want. That's what
Yeah.
society wants.
Yeah.
We want the violence to stop.
And I think it's so interesting that so many needs were met
Yeah.
in prison, except for the very reason that sent him there.
Hmm.
I gotta say, though, that in his experience, still a lot more happened than I hear from most people
Yeah.
in terms of getting the GED and the different
Yes.
things that he was able to experience.
Yes.
But it's kind of like all of that is great, but how can we not address,
Hmm.
not just for him and not just because it's about this kind of, domestic violence or
Hmm.
abuse, whatever the reason is that somebody's in prison,
Hmm.
it shouldn't be possible that they could go there and not have that issue that took them there
Yes.
addressed. Some help.
Yeah.
That's the very area.
Yeah. It's kind of
But
mind-boggling to think, wait a second, we we don't have anything that addresses that. And that was Amanda's message is, really focusing on the criminal justice system and how do we
Mm.
kind of revitalize that, which helped me really set forth on, okay, we need community programs that focus on this as well.
And
Uh,
I love that. I love that the abuser is brought in
mhm.
to the equation, as I believe you said the other day.
Yes.
Um, what does that model look like, though?
Yeah.
When you have a family, let's just say it's a mother, a daughter, a son, a grandmother, a
Mhm.
neighbor, the support system when it was really bad, they were able to run over to this place or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the abuser
Yeah.
all sitting together coming up with a solution about how to move forward in a better path. Do you have a little nugget you can share with
Yeah.
us where you thought it was amazing, where one of the people who were maybe the victim or part of the
Yeah.
circle um extended a grace?
Yeah.
Even an example of someone who maybe their first reaction was anger and then they moved
Yeah.
to a place of grace.
Yeah.
Tell me about your work.
Yeah. So there's one family in particular when you asked me that question that really came to mind. So there is kind of three components. So that or shouldn't say components because there's four components to the program, but or steps to the program. But there's three sort of programs within that. One is the residential facility. So what we know is typically the victim and the children get placed in a shelter, which is problematic in itself. When it is safe, it is less traumatizing and definitely more financially stabilizing to keep the victim and children in their home where they have access to their school, their community, their local grocery stores, all the things there.
I love
And
that.
and that we are not taking them out of their home, which can perpetuate homelessness and all of these things. So one is keeping them there, but with all of the same wraparound services. So we
And
have
you're the
our
only program I ever heard of doing it that way.
Yes, we are the
That's
first in the
awesome.
United States to do this, and hopefully the first of many as we, hopefully pick up this program all around,
That.
the US. But keeping the wraparound services. So we're reaching out to all the people impacted, the neighbor, the, extended family, the victim, the children, making sure they've got case management, their food stabilized, like all the therapy, all of that stuff right there in-house. And then we are taking the person who has caused harm and putting them in a community space where they are surrounded by people who are going through similar stuff.
Mhm.
They are surrounded by people who are holding them accountable, helping them learn immediate behavior changes of, hey, we need to get this under control, and really digging into their own trauma.
I
What
love
has
it.
caused you to pick up violence in the first place?
I love it.
And then we have that sort of restorative justice component where we
Mhm.
have, specialized staff that come together and facilitate these conversations. And the family that I'm thinking about in particular, the wife called us. They had 3 children. And she said, look, I can't stay in the home anymore. We're actually getting evicted because of the domestic violence. Like, where
Wow.
our landlord is done with us. We've had the
Mhm.
cops called on us multiple times. CPS
Mhm.
is involved. Like, our life is falling apart. So
Mhm.
at the very least, I need to come in and, stay at your shelter. So we brought her in and we have a menu of services. We showed her, here's all of the possible programs, housing, outreach, medical, and then there's RAFT, which is our program for those that do harm. And she was like, wait, what is this? I don't understand. And so
Mhm.
we talked to her about it, and she immediately in the office picked up the phone and called her partner and said, I really think that you need to come in and talk to them. And
Mhm.
so one of our therapists sat down with him and said, we have this program. You can come in, you can stay in the shelter. And he did. And so
Wow.
we had the wife and children at our other shelter. We had him at the shelter for those that do harm. And they were, in addition, going to counseling that was, oh my gosh, in the beginning. I mean, you couldn't get a word in edgewise. Like, they would
Mm.
yell over each other. It was pointing fingers. It was this and that. To remembering one of the therapists saying, oh my gosh, today we actually had a civil conversation and we could talk about the custody issues without anybody yelling at each other.
Mm.
And in addition, we had the extended family, the grandma in particular, that she was 100% adamant. She's like, she has to leave him. They can never be together again. This is not going to go well. Months later, she has a new apartment. We have been able to have them actually have, supervised in person conversations with each other about what would it look like for their relationship to continue. And
Mm.
grandma has also come around to
Aw.
entertaining the idea of what would it be like for him to continue to be in their life
Mm.
in more than just, dad picks up kids and then leaves. So it is a slow process. And of
Yeah.
course, there's a lot to unpack there for them, and the journey continues. But that
But they're
family,
doing the work and they're
yes,
healing. And
yes,
healing takes time.
it does. It does.
Wow.
And, that family, you know, they they have really, I don't want to say come full circle because that's their journey just looks different now than it did before. But I thought for sure there is no way that these two are going to even be able to have a cordial conversation with each other. And now
Mm.
that is a regular thing that they're doing.
Wow. That is great. And again, I want to applaud you for piecing it all together, doing the research, going to another country to learn about it, and then bring that to America. That is
Yeah.
so awesome. And I love that. You know, a lot of people will listen to us and they'll get maybe a little perturbed and say,
Yeah.
forget that person. They did
Yeah.
all this damage. They
Yeah.
hurt people and
Yeah.
um, but you know what? I do tend to look at people, um, whether it's the victim or the abuser, um, there's something in their soul
Yeah.
just screaming out
For help.
for help.
Yeah.
Um, they're stuck. Nobody is born, and I say this a lot. It's probably on one of my other episodes too. No one is born raising their hand saying, I want to be, when I grow up, an abuser
Yeah.
of people in any kind of way. Nobody starts there.
Yeah.
So we have to look and see what set of circumstances has brought people
Yeah.
to this. Nobody raises their hand and say, I think I'm just going to be homeless
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
they're in kindergarten or first grade or whatever. And they're
Yeah.
like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nobody says homeless.
Yeah.
Nobody says, I want to be the scum of the earth. I want
Yeah.
everybody to dislike me. I want to be this
Yeah.
mean, angry person. So when we take the time to look
Hmm.
beyond, but I also think that people who have gone through a lot of pain, the Bible says that those who have been forgiven of much love much.
Mm,
But
yes.
what if we never let them get forgiven of
Yeah.
much so they could
Yeah.
get to the point of loving much?
Yeah.
I may not have done as, you know, terrible things as somebody else, but I've done
Yeah.
my share of terrible things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We all have caused harm at some point, even if we
yeah.
don't want to admit it. That's just the human experience. We
Mm-hmm.
all have caused harm, and some is more than others. And what I say to people who are like, how could you want to help somebody who has hurt others so badly? And my answer is always, look, I'm not asking you to forgive the person that has harmed you or be in the same vicinity as them. Have I forgiven the people that have caused me harm? Yes. Am I in communication with them or in relationship with them? No, because that is what is the most healthy for me and for them. I
Mm-hmm.
am not in relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they are getting help and healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't need to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be in relationship with them, but I sure hope
Yeah.
that they are learning and growing and getting support and help so that they don't do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I gotta say, when I was younger, I was molested, and I can honestly say that not only do I want them to get help so that they don't harm other people, I
Mhm.
want them to get help so they could just be whole, not just
Yes.
not harm other people, but how about turn all that around and be
Yes.
the biggest um help and advocate for people. Now you can be the
Yes.
person instead of the abuser, you can be part of the solution. You can be
Yes.
part of the healing. You can be part of helping others.
Yeah.
Kind of like what that guy said.
Yes.
Now he's telling his story. It's
Hmm.
impacting people and he's bringing about a positive change.
Yeah.
And I think that's possible. So that's why I tend to think that way. So you used the word healing a lot in our last conversation. Define what you
Yes.
mean by healing.
Oh,
Hmm.
I think healing is such a unique word to the individual. But generally, what I mean by healing is, you know, very much what you just said is that the person can find wholeness, meaning they can come out of whatever dark trauma is leading them to pick up harmful behavior
Hmm.
and perpetuate that cycle. That's what healing looks like. That's what that journey is how do I get to the root cause of what led me here? And then what are the new things that I have to bring into my life to help me behave and relate to people in a different way that ultimately brings us connection and joy, and our heart feels so much healthier and joyful. And yeah, so that's probably a very rambly definition of healing.
So that's for the
Um,
victim and the abuser.
yes,
Hmm.
yeah.
Because the victim has to say what's brought me here.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of healing has to happen there. Just to, I think the bottom line is understanding yourself
Hmm.
against all of your experiences and figuring out what that's made you and who you are and who you're becoming.
Yeah.
Um, and I say becoming because I think no matter how healthy you are, it's still good to always think about who you're becoming
Oh, absolutely.
because you never arrive. You can
Yes.
always improve, you can
Yep.
always become better.
Yes.
So, and we're all on that journey.
We are. That is the thing that we all have in common is that we are in this human experience.
Yeah. And sometimes people feel the shame because some of us look shinier on the outside.
Mm,
That doesn't
yeah,
mean we are.
correct.
We all have our
Absolutely.
places.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know why some people's, I'm gonna call it, I don't know, sin for lack of a better term. Some people's sin is out loud, wide open,
Sure.
and
Yep.
other people's sin is deep within,
Yep.
inside, more covert, more hidden.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just as bad.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between two people that committed the same crime, but you got caught and I didn't.
Yep. Yeah.
I still did it. I just didn't get caught, so I still
Yep.
get to look like the upstanding citizen.
Right.
And that's one way, but then, there's those scenarios where um maybe I stole and you really didn't.
Hmm. Yeah.
But you may not have committed theft, but you did something else.
Yep. Yeah.
We don't get around it. And I think when we think about the grace that's been shown in our lives, whether it's through people or just through God directly, by God never letting your
Hmm.
bad stuff come all the way to the light.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, you know, I think that's what produces empathy. I think people who are not able to empathize or be compassionate, I
Hmm.
think that's still a hurting person.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
still um, a person who is even a little bit arrogant
Mm.
because they can't
Yeah.
see there's pride in not being able to see your own flaws or to consider your own
Yeah.
flaws not as great as somebody else's.
Yeah.
But then who's the judge of that? You? That's still
Yeah.
not trustworthy.
Yeah. And I think the things that you're talking about is the questions that we kind of need to unpack when we are healing.
Hmm.
And, like you said, that's kind of arrogant. I definitely agree. That comes for me in the form of ego, right? Like
Yeah.
when my ego was like, well, but they, did this and this and this, and therefore, I'm in the better seat. Well, whoa, wait a second, Sophora, like who's speaking here?
Hmm.
And I really have to check my ego in that. And when
Hmm.
we can't empathize, like you said, when we can't hold that lens to really look at where is that person coming from?
Hmm.
What is under what they're trying to say and feeling and going on? Usually that's my ego speaking to me
Hmm.
in those terms when I can't make connection with that
Hmm.
empathy.
And even if the person hasn't done something as bad as, um, or if you haven't done something as bad
Hmm.
as the other person, it's still ego
Hmm.
to take a certain degree of judgment around it because
Yeah.
um then the way I look at it is consider myself blessed that I didn't
Yes.
go through that
Yes.
or reach a point like that. I mean,
Yes.
it could have been you.
Hmm.
It's
Very much
arrogant
so.
to me for one to say, "Oh, that could never be me."
It
You know
can
what they
always
say,
be
never
you.
say never.
Hmm.
All right. I know we're getting close to the end of our talk today. It's been a great conversation, by the way. But I do have another question I want to ask you.
Yes.
You said during the previous conversation that people could reach empathy rather than anger toward their abusers. I know
Yes.
we've talked and touched on that a little bit, but will you
Yeah.
expound just a bit, the empathy rather than anger?
Yeah. So, we know all of the sayings around anger and how anger keep us stuck, right? Anger is oftentimes a secondary emotion. There's typically other things that are underneath that. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the, things that we want to explore, particularly with the person who has experienced harm, is what is underneath that anger.
Mm-hmm.
Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it hurt? Like, is it because you're not seeing, like, what is underneath that? And then when we unpack those things, we start to put together understanding
Mm.
for the situation. So we look at the situation as a whole first, understanding the situation and what contributed to that. It still may be absolutely wrong and hurtful, but we start to bring a little bit of a more perspective into it. And then eventually, looking at the person who has done harm to you and what may have brought them to pick up violence.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a spectrum there. Some people can easily step into the place of understanding, which then, really seeds empathy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And some people, have to stay in the place of just understanding the situation for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, before they can really get to a place of empathy. And I think that there are some misconceptions around empathy that if you empathize with the person who has done harm or you understand them, that means that you accept the behavior.
Mm-mm.
And that is absolutely not the case. And so, really explaining to people when we let empathy into our heart,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that we are accepting bad behavior or letting people
Right.
cross boundaries or, putting ourselves in harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually freeing ourselves from that secondary emotion of anger and figuring out how do we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Listening to you with this whole part that you just shared, I was thinking about the first step of your four principles, accountability. I think that's all in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
Taking accountability for even the part you played.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know that's hard to say. It's even hard to hear. What do you mean? I was
Mm-hmm.
confused. What do you mean? What part
Yeah.
did I play? But you know what? I've been up close and personal with a couple that were in an abusive situation,
Mm-hmm.
and I certainly see a part
Mm-hmm.
that the victim is
Mm-hmm.
playing. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they could have made some different choices here or
Mm-hmm.
there. If
Mm-hmm.
you know that you're doing something that's setting them off, I'm not trying to say, because I believe once a person puts their hand on you, they have clearly crossed the line in a different
Mm-hmm.
way. They are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but what's in the other person that keeps egging it on and you know where it's gonna land? You know where it's gonna land.
Yeah.
You have to pause and say, what's going on there? And
Mm-hmm.
then can you take ownership about what is going on in you
Yes.
that's causing you to do that, and then also causing you to stay in a situation like that
Mm-hmm.
without seeking real help or a change
Mm-hmm.
for the overall situation.
Yeah. Look, relationships are complicated, and we do have to look at what is contributing to me, being in this relationship, what, codependency is showing up for me, or what, trauma bonding is showing up. Like looking at all of that and to have somebody say that to you, and there have been many times that I have sat with my therapist that I'm like, I really am annoyed by her and what she is asking me to do right now. But that is part of the healing journey. And it's not always fun or,
Mhm.
I would say beautiful in the way of like, oh, that kind of freeing thing. But like, there's
Hard
some
work.
crunchy conversations you have to have with yourself
Hmm.
about what you have contributed to the dynamics of the relationship.
Because for something like that to persist over and over and over again habitually, you're in denial about something. There's
Hmm.
denial somewhere.
Hmm.
Getting people to come out of the place of denial.
Hmm.
Um, and I know for especially older people, there's almost like this code of ethics that you just don't talk about stuff. So
Yes.
if you don't talk
Hmm.
about stuff, it's left there to fester, and then it becomes even something that you're passing generationally,
Yes.
and it's becoming this huge monster, this huge undealt with monster. Um, but denial is never the way to go. People just want to act like it didn't happen and
Yeah.
hope it gets better. Um, and like I
Yeah.
said, I think people are even addicted to abuse. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't
I
think you
mean,
said
there's,
that. I think I just said you said that, but I
yeah.
think
There's definitely,
almost like cutters.
we normalize, right? Like chaos. And this was my experience. I mean, I grew up in a very chaotic, childhood. I mean, stuff like, our house being completely destroyed and like, dad freaking out and, choking my mom. And that was like a Tuesday night for us. And so when
Mm.
I became an adult, if there wasn't that chaos in my life,
Mm.
I that it just I had to create it. And so I got into my own sort of self-harm and sabotage behaviors
Mm.
that my husband clearly saw and was like, this is not healthy. You've got some stuff going on here. And so I absolutely resonate with what you're saying in that like we sort of get addicted to it when we normalize that, and that is our environment, our nervous system, our being gets used to that, and the stillness or the calm becomes unsafe. And so we
Yeah.
create the chaos.
I like what you said about, did you say our neural system or
Our
what did
nervous
our
system.
nervous system?
Yes.
That is so true because
Mhm.
especially if abuse or even the abuser starts at a young age, it's a certain wiring
Yes.
happening in your brain.
a
And
hundred
that
percent.
has to be undone. Like
Mm-hmm.
that has to be, it has to be dealt with. Like we call it a learned behavior,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like if we can imagine a wire being put in our
Yep.
brain, it's there, it's injected.
Yep.
And that's another way to look at it too, to inspire
Mm-hmm.
empathy.
Mm-hmm.
People have gotten this bad wiring,
Yes.
and we have to help each other get those negative wiring out.
Yeah. In
So,
the
go
in
ahead.
the neuroscience world, we say what fires together wires together, meaning whatever
Mm.
pattern behavior happens actually wires in our brain as a system. And we do have to learn new things to wire over the old stuff to create new patterns. Absolutely. It's science, it's irrefutable. That is how our brains work.
And guess what else it is? It's spiritual.
Oh,
The Bible talks about
100%.
that.
Yes.
That's what it's talking about when it's saying renew the mind.
Mhm.
Take out those old thought patterns and put in
Yes.
these new thought patterns. It's the Bible's literally telling us to
Hmm.
meditate on the things that are lovely, pure, praiseworthy of a good report.
Hmm.
Think on these things. Um, and people just listen to that, but they're not really thinking about it. That is therapy. That
Yes.
is healing. If you start forcing yourself to think on pure, praiseworthy, lovely, good
Hmm.
report type things, that is rewiring.
Hmm.
That is helping to erase some of that negative stuff that's gotten in there.
Yeah.
But we just listen to those words and say, oh, that sounds pretty, but
Hmm.
we don't put it to practice.
Yeah.
It's not good enough to have it be pretty sounding, poetic.
Yes.
You gotta,
Yes.
you
You got
gotta
to do the
use it.
work.
And if
Yeah.
people did that, their understanding of the value of even the word of God would change.
Hmm.
I think people are reading stuff as it's poetry, but not letting it go the next level
Sure.
to its
Not internalizing it.
purpose is practice. Do it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so happy to have you on. Is there anything about your program that you hope to share that I didn't ask you about?
Oh gosh. I think, if anybody is interested in learning it, if you want to implement this program, please visit us. We just rebranded to Restorative Pathways. So whether you visit us at rubiesplace.org or restorativepathways.org, it'll lead to the same organization. My door is open. I'd love to talk to people about it. And in fact, I have a book coming out next April that I'm writing about my journey to developing Raft. So more on that to come.
You have a title
If
yet?
I have a couple in mind, but I haven't
Okay.
chosen one quite
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. So we can look forward to a book. Well, guess what? You just answered my next question, which was to share how people can stay in touch with you and so
Yes.
forth, or anything else that you wanted to know. I just wanted to know if it was something about your program itself or something that you teach that we didn't touch on that you like people to know about.
Mm.
Um, but I appreciate that. So I think I didn't ask you this one, and I am going to because I
Yeah.
ask all of my guests this. Let's just imagine this wonderful, beautiful, informative conversation we just had. People forget the whole
Yeah.
thing. What's the one gem
Oh.
you want them to hold on to?
Mm. The one gem I would say is I would love for people to take a pause and be able to step out of that ego self for just a minute and imagine what the world would be like if we could have empathy for both the victim and abuser and how much that could really change our society.
That's great. Thank you. I think that is a wonderful final kind of gem there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I gotta tell you, Sephora, this has been very delightful. I am so honored and pleased that you decided to come on my show, and I feel very confident that we have put together an episode that will be useful for people. Again, the premise of my show is helping people get to their next level best. So thank you for helping me endeavor to do that and actually do it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course.